Yo, what's going on, guys? Trey back again here to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing a video response slash answer to YouTube username XX Fury Productions ZZ and or ZZ if you're Canadian. And he asked, when do I think The Walking Dead will end? So, The Walking Dead, I'm sure he was referring to the TV show, but I'm going to add on to that the comic book and when I think that both of them will end. So, pretty much when it comes to the comic book, I'll do that first because that's kind of easier to call. I predict, and this is what I think in my mind, that the Walking Dead series, Robert Kirkman has said that he believes it will go on pretty much, as almost forever. Like it'll go on for a long time, maybe 100 years, couple hundred years, this kind of stuff. I see it going on for a long time. You have comic book companies such as like DC Comics that's had Batman for a long time. Ever since Batman came out in like the 40s and Superman, I think, was in the 30s, there's been a comic book for them almost all the time. I can't remember if they were canceled. Certain comic book titles get canceled, like Captain America got canceled after the war, after World War II. People, with the hippie era, I think it was in the 50s, everybody was like, whoa, Captain America, this is about war and stuff, right? No, peace and love, get rid of that. And it actually stopped being sold completely, and then they picked it back up again a little bit later on. So that type of thing could happen with The Walking Dead over the next maybe 50 years, 100 years. After Kirkman drops out and gives it to somebody else, they may do it for a while and drop it. Eventually, it's going to get to a point, maybe in 50 years or 40 years, where there's no writer for the book or artist, and it'll just get dropped for a while. But then you always have comic book companies hiring more people, and they'll come back and they'll pick it up again and say, hey, maybe I can do something with this. Would you let me try? And, they'll get an artist or, to go with that writer or whatever, and then they'll revisit it. I don't always think it's going to be Rick, though. I don't think Rick will always be the protagonist for the Walking Dead comic book. For the television show, he probably will, but the comic book, we may see some other people like Carl eventually in the comic book may take the reins as the protagonist. Other characters, too, in his group that have joined the group along the way may take over the reins as the protagonist as well. So I think The Walking Dead can still, it can always kind of work. Even if Rick's not around, it would suck and it would be a big shock to people if Rick was to die at some point during the comic book or the television show. It would be really weird, but it could work, and over the long run, I think that that definitely they could do it. So that's the comic book. I think the comic book will pretty much always be around for the next couple hundred years at least. But it depends on the business aspect of it, not the story. The story, like the story is a great story. The problem is with Image Comics, and Image Comics is kind of like hit and miss. They've had some weird titles. For those of you guys who aren't big comic book guys, Marvel and DC are the big two pretty much. Image is kind of in there, but they've got like weird titles. Like they got Spawn, Invincible, which is also written by Robert Kirkman, some other Savage Dragon, who's like a really obscure comic book character, a bunch of others too. They've had, I think they had Turtles at one time, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, other characters like that they've had over time. So the best thing for The Walking Dead would actually be, and a lot of people may disagree with me, eventually if Image were to, like, let's say capsize or give away some of their titles, this kind of stuff, sell them, for Marvel or DC to snatch up The Walking Dead. Probably Marvel. DC could buy it too, and eventually, and then if they were with one of the big two, that comic book series will go on for hundreds of years, past all of our lifetimes probably. And I think that's probably what we're going to see happen with The Walking Dead. It's just that it will comic book. It will stop for a while and then come back. I think writers will drop it and then other writers will pick it up later. It seems to always work that way with comic books. Now, on to the TV show, so what most of you guys are probably interested in. So, The Walking Dead television show, you see, the thing about it is I think that story-wise, it can go on for 10 seasons. It can go on for 15 seasons. Do I think it will? It's really hard to say with network television. I mean, when you look at the fact that the guy who had the idea to take this and make a television show out of it has already been fired. I don't know if most of you guys know, but the initial director, Frank Darabont, who directed the first episode of the first season, and I believe he directed a couple from the second season, but don't quote me on it. He's basically always involved, even though he might not directly be directing every single episode. He's involved in everything. It was his idea to him and Gale Anne Hurd, as well as getting Robert Kirkman on board to make this into a television show, and AMC picked it up. So, he was fired halfway through the second season. stuff like that is not good. Glenn Mazzara took over after him, but you know, as the show is pretty much front runner, director slash producer, whatever. I don't know all the technicalities and details of what the differences between them are when it comes to television shows and that kind of stuff. I'm not an expert on that stuff. But anyway, pretty much when you start to see guys like that drop out, the guy who had the idea for the show, it's not a good sign. It's not a good sign at all. The writers were also fired after the first season. All the writers were fired. Which was a big thing too. I don't know if you guys remember, there was big news about the writers from The Walking Dead being fired at the end of the first season. So the show definitely, even though it doesn't look like it's had a lot of trouble, it's had a lot of trouble. The other thing too that's been really problematic with the show is AMC, since they own it, and they don't own a lot of shows. They own The Walking Dead. It's theirs. It's their baby. They own it 100%. Most of the other shows you see on AMC are owned by other companies like Sony and other companies like that. And then AMC just uses them and I think pays royalties to Sony to be able to use them. I'm pretty sure. But they actually own The Walking Dead, and that has good and bad. It has bad because of the fact that they have not been willing to shell out the cash, and this is why Frank Darabont actually got fired, is because he wanted to do more with the show. He wanted to shoot some different stuff that would have been harder to shoot, and with the budget they have, they can't do it. They can't shoot these kinds of things. In the first season, if you guys remember, the very first episode was a long episode. I think it was an hour and 20 minutes or something like that, or pretty much a good solid hour plus commercials added onto it. So it was over an hour. At the end, there's this great shot of where Rick is in the tank or getting to the tank on a horse or whatever. And I think he's in the tank, and the camera comes out and it zooms up the building. The camera goes up the building, and you see all these zombies just everywhere coming towards the tank and all around in the city and that kind of stuff. And also, too, with the second episode of the first season, Guts, where they're going through the city and there's all these zombies chasing them, that kind of stuff. That stuff was crazy cool, man. And think about the second season, we haven't seen any of that. And it's not just based on the storyline. I think the big thing about it is that they don't have the budget to do some of those things that they did in the first season. You know, some of those big scenes like that one where you've got like, you know, hundreds of zombies and the camera goes up the building, and, you know, that all costs a lot of money to get all that kind of equipment and all that shit and build all this, you know, great environment and that kind of stuff where Rick is, you know, going from here to there and, you know, on the horse and all. Like, that stuff is very expensive, but some awesome scenes like where he's horseback riding into the city, and there's like it's like an abyss. There's nobody. There's a ghost town. There's nobody there around him at all or anything. Stuff like that we haven't really seen in the second season too much. I mean, we had the first episode of the second season had some cool stuff with the herd coming down the highway. But when you think about everything they've shot in the second season, it's all really cheap stuff to do. You know, it doesn't cost a lot of money. You know, you get a bunch of cars, pile them up. You know, those whole cityscapes and stuff like that, where they get into cities and they get stuck, and you've got hundreds of zombies around. That kind of big showing, I think we may not be able to see that. Next season, season 3, has 16 episodes ordered, which is awesome, but I haven't seen budgets for it yet. So that you know, we don't know exactly if they're going to try to. It's going to be more episodes, so they really have to. They don't really have a choice. They have to, you know, expand that budget a bit and give them a little bit more money. But will they? I don't know, man. It's hard to say, you know. The thing about it is, I think story-wise, The Walking Dead can go on for 10, 15 seasons, and I think that there's still a story to be told, because the thing is at the comic book right now, they're in the second. Okay, so the television show is, and compared to the comic book, at about the second graphic novel, which is about issue, let's say about 10, 8, 9, or 10, and there are 93 issues of the comic book, so they are 8, you know, at issue 8, and there's 93. So the comic book is so far ahead in terms of literature than the show. It's insane. It's more than probably about 10 times ahead. So the TV show has gotten up to 1/9 of the long-term span of the comic book, where it's at right now. By the time the television show catches up to that part, we see this a lot in anime and manga, which is Japanese, like, for those of you guys who don't know, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Bleach, One Piece, these kinds of shows, where the comic book is ahead of the television show or the anime. by the time it catches up to issue 93, the comic book will be at issue 120 or 130 probably, maybe 140. So it's always going to kind of be behind. And then even if it catches up, they could always diverge and do different things with it. So the television show, story-wise, could go on for 10, 15, 20 years. Who knows, you know? The problems are not the writers with writing the story. The problems are AMC owning it and not giving out enough money for the budget. Writers, you know, getting fired. Frank Darabont getting fired. You know, all these things come into play. Maybe the cast, after a few seasons, may not want to return. So then, you know, do they switch out cast members? Do they kill them? Like in The Walking Dead, it's easier than a lot of shows because in a lot of shows you can't just kill somebody. You know, in 2.5 Men, you can't just kill Charlie Sheen. You know, it doesn't work very well. You could put in Ashton Kutcher, and I don't even know how they work that out story-wise because I don't watch it now that Ashton Kutcher's on it. But, you know, in The Walking Dead, you just kill them. You just kill the character. That's it. It's as simple as that. I mean, you know, when they're done, you just kill the character. It's so easy. Zombie walks up and bites them or whatever. You know, it's really easy to switch out, or not switch out actors, but get rid of actors who no longer want to continue. So, yeah, that's pretty much what I have to say about that as far as the story goes. The cast is not, I guess it's not that big of an issue because they could just kill them if they want to leave, if they don't want to do the show anymore. But what is a big issue is the budgets and AMC ownership over it. And that the show's already had a rocky start with firing a lot of people and, you know, letting go of the guy who had the idea to make a show out of The Walking Dead, Frank Darabont. So, you know, how long will it last? I'm going to make a prediction. I think we'll see The Walking Dead as long as nothing catastrophic happens behind the scenes with the network and everything. I think we could see a good solid 7 or 8 seasons of The Walking Dead pretty easily until the cast starts to get burned out and you know, the people behind the scenes start to get tired of it. I don't think people, the thing is though, is that like a lot of people watch The Walking Dead and they say it has saved television, all this stuff. It's not like that, okay? The Walking Dead, the story itself is even greater than that. Robert Kirkman's comic book, the comic book shop that I go to, the owner of the comic book shop, I was talking to him about it a little bit, and he said that, you know, it's the best comic book ever written. It's the best. And he's read a million. This is a guy who's dedicated his life towards comic books. He has read 1 million like comic books, man. Like way more than I could ever read. Like you see all these action figures. This is how crazy I am about figures and stuff. Like I don't know if I showed you guys my room before, but I got like a Gotham City here display that I built. I've got a big display over there. I've got like a Bat Cave over there. Bunch of stuff over here. As crazy as I am about action figures, this guy's even crazier about comic books, okay? And this guy knows his stuff. And like he said, it's the best comic book ever written. I think The Walking Dead, you know, can work in any medium, even if they were to make movies of The Walking Dead. And I think that they could do that. If they work that in with a show, they could have like some big events for the movies and stuff. But they could, any medium. When you have a story like that that works that well, it can work whether it's a television show, comic book, novel. People will want to pick it up. People will be interested in it, no doubt, no question. So how long is it going to last? As long as we don't see any problems, I'd say at least 7 or 8 seasons. I can see it going on up to 10 or 15, but you know, you just don't know what's going to happen and what direction they're headed. With network television, I mean, what did Smallville go for? 10 seasons? You know, and I don't even know who was watching that because I certainly wasn't watching that after about the first 1 or 2. Will people still be interested in it? I think people will always be interested in The Walking Dead because, like I said, the story is that good. As long as the writers don't screw it up too bad for the television show, it should be fine because the comic book, you know, like I said, you know, I've read issue 1 to 93, and every time the next issue comes out, I'm excited to get it. Just as excited as I am, or almost, as when the next issue comes on television. So, good stuff. That's pretty much it for this video, guys. I'm going to make a prediction. 7 or 8 seasons. I think The Walking Dead will be on for. But, you know, I could see it 4 or 5 seasons. I could see them getting into trouble with the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's still kind of early to tell, but I think it'll last for about 7 or 8 seasons. I think the viewers will always be there. It's just the behind-the-scenes stuff that's going to probably kill it eventually. Yeah. That's it for this video, guys. If you have any suggestions for videos, please write them below. And know that when I say this, I actually mean it. If you give me a good suggestion for a video that actually, like, that I think people will want to watch, then I will do it. Like, I really will. You just got to give me a good, a good suggestion. Anyway, I've talked long enough about this one, guys. Later. Peace.